Before we begin, you need to know something. Much of what you believe about Latin American geography is false. Yes, even things you learned in school. And when you discover the last facts on this list of 50, you'll understand why almost no one had realized it before. Let's start with number 50, the Boiling Lake in Ecuador. In Tungurahua Province, Ecuador, lies Lake Quicocha, a volcanic crater forming a lake many believe to be calm, but in reality its geothermal activity causes it to continuously release gases and hot bubbles, especially near the crater's edges. Although it never boils like a pot, the waters reach temperatures and acidity levels that can cause mild burns on direct contact, and during certain seasons there are even strong sulfur smells that alert to the constant volcanic energy beneath the surface. The most surprising thing is that this area was formed after an eruption about 3,100 years ago, creating a 3-kilometer wide caldera. Locals tell stories about how the fish inhabiting the lake can suddenly die due to abrupt changes in temperature and gases, something many visitors ignore, thinking it's simply a mysterious but safe lake. This unique phenomenon makes Quicocha one of the strangest bodies of water in South America, proving not all lakes are calm at first glance. 49. The city that changes country in Bolivia. On the border between Bolivia and Peru lies the city of Desaguadero, famous because its location on both sides of the river of the same name makes the city seem to change country depending on which side you walk on. What's striking is that houses, businesses, and streets in the same neighborhood can belong to either Bolivia or Peru, creating unusual situations with public services, currency in use, and local police. Residents have adapted to this peculiarity for decades, crossing the bridge as if it were just another street, while tourists are amazed to change countries in seconds. Moreover, Desaguadero functions as an informal international marketplace where products, prices, and regulations of both countries mix. This has created unique traditions, such as markets that exist only at this border crossing and festivals involving citizens from both nations. Curiously, the borderline is not always visible, and many visitors do not realize that walking through the main square has them in both Bolivia and Peru simultaneously, something that happens naturally nowhere else in Latin America with such ease. 48. The desert where it snows in Chile. Although Chile's Atacama Desert is famous as one of the driest places on Earth, there is a region called Valley of the Moon where, under very specific climatic conditions, small snowfalls have been recorded. This phenomenon occurs rarely and only in the highest parts of the valley, creating a striking contrast: brown dunes and red rocks covered by a white layer of snow that disappears within hours. For many visitors, it is completely unexpected to see snow in one of the world's driest deserts. The most fascinating part is that these brief snowfalls create ephemeral microecosystems where resilient plants and microorganisms capitalize on the moisture. Some researchers have pointed out that these events could be key to understanding how life could exist on other arid planets. Therefore, beyond being a visual spectacle, snow in the Valley of the Moon has become a scientific and tourist phenomenon few expect to find in such a seemingly inhospitable place. 47. The island with a volcano that seems to float in Guatemala. In Lake Atitlan, Guatemala, there is the island of Santiago Atitlan, whose volcanic silhouette creates an impressive optical illusion. When the lake is calm and the sun shines in a certain way, San Pedro volcano, which dominates the island, appears to float over the water. Remarkably, this effect is so pronounced that some local legends say the volcano is suspended between the sky and the lake, confusing tourists and photographers who have never seen anything like it before. Beyond the visual illusion, the island and its volcano hide unique geological stories. The eruption of San Pedro, although currently inactive, shaped the lake basin over 80,000 years ago and left volcanic deposits still studied today. Additionally, the Tsutujil indigenous community has adapted their culture and architecture to coexist with this dramatic landscape, creating a setting where science, history, and legend blend in a place that seems to defy geographical logic. 46. The river that disappears and reappears in Brazil. In Mato Grosso State, Brazil, the Guaporé River is famous for a little-known phenomenon. In certain stretches, the water disappears beneath the surface and then reappears kilometers downstream. This is due to a complex network of caves and limestone soils that allow large volumes of water to circulate underground, challenging the traditional idea of a visible continuous river. For explorers and locals, walking along the riverbank is bewildering because a seemingly active stretch may be completely dry while another nearby flows strongly. Incredible is that these disappearances are not recent geological accidents. Studies show this pattern has persisted for centuries and generated unique cultural and economic adaptations. Fishermen know exactly where the river resurfaces, and nearby communities have developed techniques to use the underground flow for irrigation and consumption, knowledge passed down through generations. This phenomenon makes the Guapore one of South America's most enigmatic rivers, defying logic and perceptions of how a river should behave. 45. Guatemala's giant sleeping volcano. In Zacatepeques department, Guatemala, lies Acatenango volcano, which many tourists climb to view the neighboring Fuego volcano erupting. Strikingly, Acatenango has had no recorded eruption in over 100 years, but its fumaroles and constant underground heat indicate it remains active beneath the surface, acting like a gigantic sleeping giant that could awaken any time. Scientists constantly monitor its seismic activity because small tremors may precede lava movements impacting nearby villages. Even more surprising is that Acatenango's summit hides ancient petrified lava flows that look like giant frozen rivers, creating a landscape that mixes inhospitable and fascinating. Locals say nights at the summit can be extremely cold, with gusts intensifying sulfurous vapor, making many tourists feel as though they are walking on a sleeping giant breathing beneath their feet. 44. The jungle that changes color in Brazil. In Brazil's Amazon, near the Negro River, there is a little-known natural phenomenon. Certain forest areas subtly change color during the dry season due to humidity, sunlight, and the natural oils released by leaves. Remarkably, from a drone or elevated point, the forests seem to shift from intense green to reddish-brown within days, confusing those who think the trees have died or a nearby fire occurred. This effect, beyond being visually impressive, has ecological impacts. Species of birds and mammals migrate to greener areas to feed, creating movement patterns that even surprise local biologists. Fascinatingly, this color change occurs almost synchronized with sunlight and humidity, a phenomenon not yet fully explained, making this part of the Amazon one of the continent's most dynamic and visually striking ecosystems. 43. The Brazilian city that disappears underwater. In Minas Gerais state, Brazil, the city of Capitolio is famous for its canyons and Lake Furnace. Curiously, during certain rainy seasons, the lake's level rises so much that parts of the historic city become temporarily submerged, spawning legends of lost cities re-emerging only when the water subsides. Tourists are often surprised to walk through what seems a normal landscape only to find streets, plazas, and old structures partially covered by water. Most strikingly, these floods are not accidents but consequences of dam construction and lake regulation, altering natural river flow. This creates a nearly mystical effect. Old bridges and colonial structures appear and disappear with the water level, offering photographers and explorers a spectacle that feels like a fairy tale, reminding us that Brazil's geography can be as dynamic as unexpected. 42. The river that flows upwards in Venezuela. In Bolívar State, Venezuela, the Caroni River is known for its impressive volume and the famous Devil's Throat. However, in certain rapids and waterfall areas, the water creates a visual effect seeming to make the river flow upwards, especially during rainy season when currents hit particular rocks and produce whirlpools that confuse the movement perception. Visitors claim this phenomenon seems to defy physics, though it's explained by the interaction among current topography and water pressure. Additionally, this illusion has fueled local legends about river spirits pushing water against the current, stories passed down generations. Scientifically, it has been studied as an example of extreme river dynamics and serves to educate on how terrain and water force create surprising visual effects that appear unreal even to experienced explorers. 41. Chile's bottomless lake. In Chile's Los Lagos region stands Lake General Carrera, famous for its marble formations called marble chapels. Impressively, locals claim certain lake areas are so deep and dark they appear bottomless, especially near underground channels connecting with other lakes and rivers in the region. Boats navigating these parts report unexpected currents and whirlpools capable of catching light vessels, surprising visitors expecting tranquility from the surface. Fascinatingly, the site's geology, shaped by glaciations and marble erosion, has created underwater caves and tunnels forming passages several meters deep. This has led scientists and tourists to regard General Carrera not only as an impressive lake due to its size and turquoise color, but also as a mysterious and complex ecosystem where the bottom remains a first-time visitor's enigma. 40. The Brazilian island that changes size. In the Amazon Delta, Brazil, Marajó Island, the world's largest river island, varies in size depending on the rainy season, with much of its surface submerged and isolating villages, altering transportation routes and animal migration. Sands emerge and disappear with the river's cycle while buffalo and migratory birds adapt, making Marajo a natural laboratory demonstrating how geography can be fluid and redefine the traditional idea of an island as a stable territory. 39. The Whispering Mountain in Peru. Near Cusco's Sacred Valley, Peru, Moray Mountain produces sounds resembling whispers on certain mornings when wind passes through its circular Incan terraces. Besides this acoustic phenomenon, the terraces were designed with deep knowledge of microclimates and humidity. Some researchers suggest the whispers could indicate atmospheric changes, blending history, engineering, and geography in a place where the mountain literally seems to interact with its visitors. 38. The Underground Lake in Mexico. In Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, Cenote Sac Actun forms an underground system of crystal-clear lakes where water seems to merge with limestone walls, creating the illusion of an endless lake. Beyond this visual effect, it hosts blind fish, crustaceans adapted to darkness, and ancient Mayan remains combining geological mystery, biodiversity, and culture, making Sac Actun a subterranean labyrinth defying expectations about lakes and rivers. 37. The mountain range that changes color in Chile. In Chile's Antofagasta region, the Valley of the Six Colors owes its dramatically changing mountain hues to mineral composition, shifting colors from intense reds to purples and greens depending on sunlight. This natural spectacle fascinates visitors and photographers. These color variations also reveal the region's geological history with iron, copper, and manganese deposits tracing millions of years of tectonic activity and erosion, showing geography's visual and scientific richness. 36. The river that disappears and reappears in Bolivia. In Pando, Bolivia, the Manuripe River vanishes into karst limestone formations for several kilometers before resurfacing, creating ephemeral lakes and flooded caves that challenge the logic of a visible river. This impacts local fauna, with fish and birds adjusting routes according to underground watercourses, while geologists study these rivers to understand aquifer formation, illustrating the surprising dynamism and complexity of Bolivian Amazon geography. 35. Ecuador's breathing volcano. In Tungurahua province, Ecuador, Tungurahua volcano constantly emits fumaroles and hot gases as if it breathes despite seeming calm. This phenomenon warns of its internal activity and forces locals to adapt with ash-resistant crops and traditional rituals. This combination of visual spectacle, risk, and daily life demonstrates geography's danger and cultural significance simultaneously. 34. The border city that lives in two countries, Desaguadero City on the Bolivia-Peru border, is divided by the Desaguadero River, such that houses, shops, and squares may belong to different countries, meaning walking a few meters can change your nation without any checkpoint. Mixed markets, festivals, and local traditions intertwine to create a unique urban scene where geography and politics blend tangibly and surprisingly. 33. Snow falls in the world's driest desert. In Chile's Atacama Desert, brief snowfalls in the Valley of the Moon cover red dunes and brown rocks with a white blanket that disappears hours later. This creates surreal contrasts and ephemeral microecosystems where plants and microorganisms capitalize on temporary moisture, showing how extreme geography can combine aridity, beauty, and biological resilience in an unexpected phenomenon. 32. Guatemala's floating volcano. At Guatemala's Lake Atitlan, San Pedro volcano creates the illusion of floating over the island thanks to perspective, water reflections, and topography. A striking visual effect enchanting visitors and complementing the region's geological history where deep valleys and unique biodiversity intertwine with Zutujil culture adapted to the dramatic landscape. 31. The river that disappears and reappears in Brazil. The Guaporé River in Mato Grosso, Brazil, flows invisible and subterranean sections through caves and limestone soils, defying expectations of a conventional river. Local fishermen harness hidden currents and wildlife adjusts migration patterns, making it an impressive example of dynamic geography blending mystery, ecological adaptations, and regional culture. 30. The volcano that looks like a mirror in Chile. Osorno volcano in Chile's Los Lagos region perfectly reflects in Lake Lanquillo on windless mornings, creating a natural mirror that constantly changes with light, temperature, and atmospheric pressure. Its active volcanic activity shapes microclimates, soils, and biodiversity, combining a mystical visual spectacle with unique geological and ecological relevance. 29. The beach that disappears in Brazil. In Lençóis Maranhenses, Brazil, white sand dunes alternate with temporary lagoons that vanish when water levels drop, creating a mutable landscape fascinating to tourists. Meanwhile, fish and birds adapt to these ephemeral ecosystems, illustrating how the interplay of water, sand, and wind dynamically transforms geography and wildlife. 28. The city that breathes underwater in Mexico. In Bacalar, Mexico, the Lagoon of Seven Colors releases bubbles from its underwater cenotes, giving the impression it breathes, while its transparent water reveals suspended sand and rock formations. This almost magical effect and unique ecosystem show local biodiversity in motion, making geography feel alive to visitors. 27. The mountain that changes shape in Argentina. Salta's Cerro de los Siete Colores seems to deform according to light and perspective, a visual effect reflecting millions of years of erosion and sedimentation. Meanwhile, insects and plants adapt to specific strata, proving geography is not only a visual spectacle but an active ecosystem that continuously changes with light, climate, and human observation. 26. The river that disappears under the jungle in Peru. In Madre de Dios, Peru, Tambopata River vanishes beneath the jungle and reappears kilometers later through caves and porous soils. This surprises visitors and regulates fish and mammal migration. Indigenous communities use this knowledge to anticipate floods and manage resources, demonstrating Amazonian geography's secrets defy logic and perception. Before continuing, remember to subscribe and leave your like to keep discovering Latin America's most amazing and surprising geography. 25. The sand island that moves in Venezuela. In Venezuela's Orinoco Delta, floating sandbanks shift positions with tides and currents, moving meters within weeks and causing visible changes on maps and settlements. Meanwhile, birds, reptiles, and fishermen exploit these temporary islands. This shows how active river geography directly influences human and animal life in a dynamic and surprising phenomenon. 24. The desert with rains that create ephemeral lagoons in Chile. In Chile's Atacama Desert, brief rains form temporary lagoons among dunes and salt flats that appear and disappear within days, generating completely different landscapes each time. These ephemeral waters support flora and fauna adapted to extreme conditions like flamingos and crustaceans. This shows that even one of the driest places on Earth has geography and life that are dynamic, ephemeral, and visually spectacular. 23. The underground lake that glows in Mexico. In Quintana Roo, Mexico, underground cenotes reflect light so intensely some areas seem to glow from the bottom, a natural effect caused by water clarity and mineral composition varying with sunlight. These lakes also host endemic fish and crustacean species, combining a stunning visual phenomenon with subterranean geography and unique biodiversity that amazes visitors and explorers alike. 22. The mountain range that sings in Argentina. In San Juan, Argentina, the Quebrada del Toro mountain range produces natural sounds when wind passes through canyons and ravines, creating a mountain song audible for kilometers. Considered supernatural by ancient inhabitants, this phenomenon blends acoustics, geography, and human perception, showing how wind relief interaction generates unique sonic spectacles still fascinating geologists and visitors. 21. The river hiding under the jungle in Brazil. In Brazil's Amazon near Acre, the Iaco River partially disappears under the jungle and reappears downstream, forming subterranean channels that confuse explorers as fish and terrestrial fauna adapt to invisible currents. Locals use this knowledge to anticipate floods and locate fish, evidencing how Amazonian hydrology and topography create unpredictable rivers defying common riverbed perceptions. 20. The island that seems to move in Colombia. In Colombia's San Bernardo archipelago, sandy islands and mangroves slowly shift positions due to currents and sedimentation, disappearing during storms and re-emerging elsewhere, baffling cartographers and inhabitants. This movement also generates temporary habitats for migratory birds and fish, demonstrating how coastal geography rapidly transforms and coastal ecosystems adapt fascinatingly to unpredictable changes. 19. The mountain that breathes fire in Ecuador. In Ecuador's Cotopaxi province, Cotopaxi volcano emits constant fumaroles, creating the illusion of breathing fire even without visible lava. This persistent activity reveals intense energy building beneath the crust, with small steam and gas explosions possible without warning, affecting vegetation and nearby hiking routes. Scientists closely monitor this activity as Cotopaxi can explosively erupt, potentially impacting cities like Latacunga and Quito. Locals have learned to coexist with this giant, adapting crops and traditions to the constant ash and volcanic gas presence. This phenomenon shows how active Andean geography combines beauty, danger, and human adaptation in one place. 18. The lagoon that changes color in Bolivia. In Bolivia's Salar de Uyuni, Laguna Colorada is renowned for its intense red tone caused by algae and minerals. Strikingly, this color changes with seasons and water evaporation, shifting from bright red to muted shades that may mislead tourists about the lake's depth or composition. The presence of minerals like borax and iron creates metallic reflections seeming unreal under the highland sun. This color variation affects wildlife. Flamingos and other migratory birds adjust feeding behavior based on algae availability each season. For photographers and scientists, Laguna Colorada is a phenomenon where geography, chemistry, and biology merge, displaying a unique ecosystem constantly transforming before observers' eyes. 17. The river that walks in Paraguay. In Paraguay's Chaco region, Pilcomayo River constantly changes course, shifting meanders and creating new sand islands. This river avulsion can erase villages or farms from one year to the next, while new lands emerge in previously dry areas. Locals must adapt by relocating homes and crops according to the river's flow. This geographic dynamic also creates ephemeral habitats for water birds and reptiles, while terrestrial fauna must quickly adjust to terrain changes. Pilcomayo exemplifies how a river acts as an active landscape transformer where geography is not fixed but a living process interacting with human and animal life. 16. The mountain that sings in Mexico. In Mexico's Oaxaca state, Sierra Norte contains rock formations producing harmonic sounds when wind passes through specific cracks. Remarkably, these resonances carry for kilometers, creating a sensation the mountain sings or communicates with nearby towns. For ancient Zapotec inhabitants, these sounds had spiritual significance, and today geologists study how topography and rock structure produce this natural acoustic phenomenon. This acoustic effect not only surprises visitors but also influences local fauna. Birds and bats adjust flight paths to avoid high-resonance canyons. The blend of sound, landscape, and culture makes this region a place where geography is experienced through hearing, creating a unique connection between nature and human perception. 15. The lake that boils in Peru. In Arequipa, Peru, Lake Salinas has thermal zones where water reaches extremely high temperatures due to underground volcanic activity. Strikingly, the lake, seemingly calm, can release vapor and hot bubbles at any moment, creating a visual similar to a boiling lake. This surprises tourists and requires caution as the surface can be deceptively harmless. Beyond the spectacle, these hot waters alter the lake's chemistry, creating habitats for unique extremophile microorganisms. Researchers study these zones to understand life's adaptation to extreme temperatures and conditions, making Salinas a natural laboratory where geography, geology, and biology intersect fascinatingly. 14. The city that seems to float in Guatemala. At Lake Atitlan, Santiago Atitlan City has a unique visual effect. Depending on light and water calm, the island and its volcano appear to float above the lake. Strikingly, this is not a photographic trick, but a combination of perspective, reflection, and topography that fools human perception, creating the sensation the island isn't anchored to the bottom. The interaction between the Tzutujil community and this landscape has produced unique cultural traditions, including rituals related to the mountain and lake. For scientists and tourists, Santiago Atitlan exemplifies how geography can create surprising optical illusions while maintaining a complex active ecosystem around it. 13. The river that disappears and reappears in Bolivia. In Pando, Bolivia, the Manuripe River has stretches where water sinks into limestone soils and emerges kilometers later, forming underground rivers. Strikingly, this makes some areas seemingly dry while the river remains active underground, confusing explorers and tourists. This dynamic also influences fauna. Fish and birds adjust routes according to subterranean flow, while indigenous communities use this knowledge to anticipate floods and harvest natural resources. It is an impressive example of how Amazonian geography combines mystery, science, and human adaptation in one place. 12. The mountain that changes color in Chile. In Purmamarca, Chile, Cerro de los Siete Colores shows different shades depending on time of day, sunlight, and mineral composition. Strikingly, these changes are so drastic, some sections seem entirely different from morning to afternoon, shifting from intense reds to purples and greens as if the mountain were alive and changing before visitors' eyes. Beyond beauty, these colors narrate millions of years of tectonic activity, sedimentation, and erosion. Also, the microclimate generated creates ecological niches for flora and fauna adapted to each mineral stratum, showing Purmamarca's geography combines visual spectacle and unique biodiversity. 11. The beach that disappears in Brazil. In Lençóis Maranhenses, Brazil, white dunes intersperse with lagoons appearing only in the rainy season. Strikingly, these lagoons are ephemeral and can vanish within days, totally altering the landscape and creating a constantly changing scenario before visitors' eyes. The dynamic between water, sand, and wind generates temporary habitats for birds and small crustaceans that must rapidly adapt to terrain changes. For tourists, Lençóis Maranhenses is not just a beach, but a constantly transforming geographic spectacle where geography moves and breathes unpredictably and vividly. 10. The mountain that cries in Venezuela. In Mérida State, Venezuela, Pico Bolívar Mountain exhibits a little-known phenomenon. After heavy rains, small continuous waterfalls emerge among its rocks as if the mountain cries. Strikingly, these streams, though small, can appear anywhere on the summit and disappear days later, creating a dynamic landscape where the mountain seems alive and changeable. This phenomenon is not only visual but affects local flora. Lichens and alpine plants develop specifically in these moist microhabitats, showcasing how geography directly interacts with life. Furthermore, locals associate these waters with ancestral legends, blending geography, biology, and culture into a unique natural spectacle. 9. The lake that glows in Mexico. In Quintana Roo, Mexico, local underground cenotes produce light reflections, making water appear to glow from the bottom. Strikingly, this natural effect caused by minerals and water clarity can intensify until it seems the lake emits its own light, creating a magical and supernatural landscape sensation. Moreover, the cenotes host endemic species adapted to darkness and unique water chemistry. This combination of visual phenomenon, biodiversity, and subterranean geography turns cenotes into natural laboratories where science and natural aesthetics meet, surprising even experienced explorers. 8. The volcano that lights up the night in Guatemala. Fuego volcano in Guatemala is famous for its nighttime eruptions. Strikingly, during some eruptions, incandescent lava lights the sky so intensely it's visible over 50 kilometers away, creating a spectacle seeming like dawn at night. This phenomenon demonstrates volcanic geography's power and the constant danger it poses to nearby residents. Beyond its visual spectacle, the volcano's activity shapes regional geography. Recent lava flows modify rivers, roads, and farmland, while scientists continually monitor seismic activity to forecast possible disasters. Thus, Fuego uniquely combines beauty, danger, and active geography in Latin America. 7. The lagoon that looks like a mirror in Bolivia. In Bolivia's Salar de Uyuni, the lagoon near the salt flats turns into a giant mirror during the rainy season. Strikingly, water only a few centimeters deep reflects sky and surrounding mountains perfectly, creating the illusion of an inverted universe where sky and earth fuse. This fleeting transformation also affects fauna. Flamingos and migratory birds use reflective surfaces for travel and feeding. For visitors, this effect is not just visual but almost surreal, showing how geography and climate create landscapes that seem unreal. 6. The beach that disappears and reappears in Brazil. In Lençóis Maranhenses, Brazil, white dunes fill with temporary lagoons after the rainy season. Strikingly, these lagoons are ephemeral and can vanish within days, completely altering the landscape and creating a constantly changing spectacle before visitors' eyes. This phenomenon creates unique micro-ecosystems. Fish, crustaceans, and migratory birds adapt to water appearance and disappearance. For tourists, Lençóis Maranhenses is more than a beach. It's a geographic show moving and breathing unpredictably and vividly. 5. The river that disappears and flows underground in Peru. In Madre de Dios, Peru, the Tambopata River has stretches where it disappears under the jungle and reappears kilometers downstream. Strikingly, these underground currents form hidden caves and lakes only experts know, causing the river to seem vanished from the Earth's surface. This dynamic affects local fauna. Fish and migratory birds adjust routes to underground flow, while indigenous communities use river knowledge for fishing and transport. It's an amazing example of Amazonian geography being mysterious, dynamic, and deeply connected to human and animal life. 4. The mountain that changes shape in Argentina. In Salta, Argentina, Cerro de los Siete Colores reveals peaks and strata appearing to transform with perspective and light. Strikingly, the mountain appears to move, deform, or breathe before visitors' eyes, an effect caused by millions of years of erosion and sedimentation of distinct minerals. This visual variation also creates specific microhabitats for flora and fauna surviving only in particular mountain layers. Cerro de los Siete Colores demonstrates geography can be both visually spectacular and essential for local biodiversity, integrating art and science in one landscape. 3. The volcano that seems to float in Guatemala. San Pedro volcano in Lake Atitlan creates the illusion of floating on water on calm mornings. Strikingly, this perfect optical illusion fools even those aware of its existence, making the island and volcano seem suspended above the lake. Moreover, the volcano and island form a unique ecosystem where the Zutujil community has developed culture and traditions adapted to this dramatic landscape. The combination of geography, perspective, and biodiversity makes San Pedro a natural, almost magical, and unique phenomenon in Latin America. 2. The ephemeral lagoon that changes the desert in Chile. In Atacama, Chile, small lagoons appear among dunes only during the rainy season. Strikingly, these lagoons disappear within days, completely altering desert geography and creating temporary habitats essential for birds, crustaceans, and flora adapted to extreme conditions. This phenomenon shows even the driest deserts are dynamic, with constantly changing geography and rapidly adapting ecosystems. Experiencing these ephemeral lagoons transforms the perception of what a desert means, revealing a living, mutable world. 1. The underground river that defies logic in Brazil. In Mato Grosso, Brazil, the Guaporé River has stretches where water vanishes beneath caves and limestone soils only to reappear kilometers later. Strikingly, this river seems to hide from plain sight, defying all expectations of how a normal river should flow. This unique dynamic affects wildlife adjusting routes to invisible currents and humans learning to navigate and use resources adaptively. Guaporé is an extreme example of living geography, a natural phenomenon mixing mystery, science, and nature's dynamic force in an unparalleled way. After learning these 50 geographic facts you probably thought were true, tell us, which surprised you most? Leave your answers in the comments and let's see how many chose the same. And speaking of choosing, the best thing we can do is watch the video on screen. That way we'll become true experts in Latin American geography. But before you go, don't forget to subscribe and hit like so we can keep learning together. See you in the video.